James Van Der Beek did not turn his cancer into a brand. He turned it into sentences other people could use. When the Dawson's Creek Star revealed in November 2024 that he'd been diagnosed with colorectal cancer the prior August, he didn't default to euphemism. He told people he went into shock a little bit, fought the urge to break down and fall apart, and then did the smallest, most useful thing first, reminded himself he did have the information yet. From there, interviews and appearances became less about headlines than about handholds, phrases that reduced a terrifying sprawl into actionable pieces. He called treatment the full-time job of having cancer, a functional frame that swapped movie montage stoicism for daily professionalism. He quantified his emotional weather instead of hiding it. About 90% of the time, he said, he could view the diagnosis as a forcing function for changes he'd be thankful for in a year or 5 or 30. 10% of the time, he added, he was a sobbing, terrified mess. He said it without apology, so other people wouldn't feel defective if fear chewed up some days. He also knew what fame could buy that medicine cannot: attention. On Good Morning America a month later, he explained why he'd gone public. "There's going to be a purpose to this," he said. "I think by sharing this I can do some good." The good he named wasn't abstract. He wanted people to get screened, especially those, like him, who had no really obvious symptoms and would have no reason to rush to the doctor. He repeated that line in July 2025 on Today and paired it with a recalibration. "I take things a little bit more slowly now, just taking the time to appreciate every single moment." Presence, for him, wasn't a slogan, it was packing. Faith showed up in that same quiet grammar, the statement announcing his death on Feb. 11, 2026, at 48, said he met his final days with courage, faith, and grace. He hadn't sermonized about belief while he was sick. He had borrowed its posture, a steadiness that left room for fear without letting fear claim the lead. This is a look back built in his spirit, specific, human-scaled, and useful. First, the shock and structure, how he learned to hold two truths at once and why nomming the full-time job matters. Then, the purpose, why he used his platform to nudge screenings and what he hoped sharing could spare someone else. Next, how the experience bent his spiritual and day-to-day lens without tipping into myth. We'll also place his disclosure in context by comparing its tone and aims to another high-profile cancer announcement, that of the Princess of Wales, without inventing an equivalence where there isn't one. Finally, we'll center the action item he kept highlighting: what symptoms can and can't warn you, and how to think about screening if you're well. No miracle claims, no voyeurism, just the words he left and the work they suggest. When the call came in August 2023, James Van Der Beek said the first sensation was a blankness. "I think I went into shock a little bit," he told people in 2024, admitting there was a part of him that wanted to break down and fall apart. The second sensation, the one that kept him from drowning right away, was a logic switch. You just don't have the information yet. If you've ever lived through a diagnosis or walked beside someone who has, you know what that sentence buys: a few hours of breath. The next morning, he said, the weight settled in. "It really weighed on me that I was in for a process I had not anticipated," and with that, he drew the first box around chaos. Thus began the full-time job of having cancer. That phrase functioned like scaffolding. Calling it a job doesn't glamorize the grind or downplay the fear. It organizes both. Jobs have hours and tasks. They have checklists and days off, coworkers and experts, a calendar that must bend to the body's capacity and the clinic's pace. By nomming the work, he freed himself and listeners from the performance pressure that grows up around disease narratives. You don't have to be a warrior or a sage. You can be a professional patient. You can show up for labs, chase insurance, call a friend, fold laundry, cry in the car, and call that a day well done. He also refused to sanitize the mind. About 90% of the time, he told people, he could frame the diagnosis as a door, force changes in diet, rhythm, priorities that he imagined being thankful for in a year, 5 years, 30 years. The counterweight was honest and unsparing. 10% of the time, I was a sobbing, terrified mess. He didn't apologize for the math or present it as a virtue test other patients should pass. He offered it as a weather report, expect both sun and storms, and modeled a kind of emotional bookkeeping that caregivers find invaluable. It gives spouses and kids and friends permission to call a squall and still believe the sky clears. The shock structure pairing matters because it translates. In clinics and kitchens, what undoes people is not only fear but formlessness. You just don't have the information yet is a bridge from panic to plan. Full-time job is the shape of the plan, appointments, treatments, side effects, rest, repeat. 90-10 is the forecast that keeps hope from breaking on contact with a bad day. None of it required jargon. All of it squared with the message he returned to when he felt steadier. Screen if you can. Let early information be your plan instead of your panic. Van Der Beek spent 3 decades in front of cameras. He understood the bargain your name makes with the public. Illness could have been an easy excuse to close the blinds. He chose a narrower filter, let people in when it would help. Having been in the public eye as long as I have, as soon as this happened, I thought, you know what? There's going to be a purpose to this. I think by sharing this, I can do some good, he said on Good Morning America in December 2024. The good wasn't abstract awareness. It was logistics. He wanted eligible people to book screenings before symptoms forced the issue. A month later, he pushed the same point with a slightly different edge. On Today in July 2025, he highlighted the trap that catches too many. You don't need to have really obvious symptoms to get screened. He confessed he didn't feel anything that made him rush to the doctor before his own diagnosis. The confession is part of the nudge. It collapses the distance between I'm fine and I should call. It also addresses a dangerous cultural tell. We tend to wait for pain, blood, weight loss, or a calendar age we've decided counts as old before we make preventive care routine. Colorectal cancers don't always issue such warnings. Screening finds precancerous polyps and early disease when they're easier to treat. It's maintenance, not a moral. He paired the push with a recalibration of his own life that didn't pretend enlightenment cures anything. I take things a little bit more slowly now, just taking the time to appreciate every single moment. For a lot of patients, that's not a revelation, it's a tactic. Slowing down is how you make the job sustainable. It's also how you register the parts of a year you don't want to wish away. For someone who had spent a career in production schedules and press cycles, that out-loud shift mattered. It told other high-capacity people that doing some good can look like saying no to everything but the necessary, and like saying yes to something many of us have put off because we were healthy and busy. He also managed to keep the spotlight off his family without walling them off. The disclosures came through controlled channels, people, morning shows, rather than a drip feed of personal posts. He didn't narrate clinic corridors on Instagram. He didn't draft his spouse as a spokesperson. In a media landscape that often mistakes transparency for virtue, this kind of boundary looks old-fashioned. It's also a model. You can tell enough to help without turning your house into a set. The statement announcing his death said James Van Der Beek met his final days with courage, faith, and grace. In interviews over the previous year, he rarely used theological language, but his framing registered as faith-adjacent. A steady insistence on purpose when none was guaranteed, gratitude that wasn't saccharine, and a refusal to dignify fear as an identity. I have no fear, he said early on, not as bravado, but as a posture he was choosing in the face of a process he had not anticipated. Months later, when the rhythms of treatment had taught him what endurance actually requires, the vocabulary shifted into something more contemplative. I take things a little bit more slowly now, just taking the time to appreciate every single moment. Presence in this telling wasn't a new age cure, it was a contingency plan. Scans and specialists steal calendars. Appreciation is a way to steal time back. He didn't pitch mindfulness as magic. He pitched it as mercy for himself and for the people living around him. If you're not sprinting toward normal, you can register a daughter's laugh or the taste of coffee in a chemo week or the fact that a body got you from the car to the clinic, and back without treating those notes like pennies in a swear jar. That modesty kept his faith references grounded. He didn't testify or prescribe. He adopted a frame: courage, faith, and grace, and then behaved as though those words are verbs instead of badges. He also left room for collapse. The 90% 10% split wasn't virtue math, it was permission. Admitting that a tenth of his days became sobbing, terrified mess didn't negate courage, it named its texture. It also modeled grace in its secular sense, a gentleness toward parts of ourselves most of us try to mask unless someone else goes first. Faith then showed up in the choosing: keep showing up to appointments, keep asking for help, keep speaking plainly, keep trusting that sharing the story can save a stranger time. Presence showed up in the scheduling: shrink horizons, pay attention, say thank you when you can, forgive yourself when you can't. It's easy to mythologize people at the end. He didn't. He kept his family's privacy intact. He didn't turn prayer into a performance. He didn't reduce grace to a glib caption. If anything, he demoted inspiration to a byproduct. The main task remained the job. In that sequence: shock, structure, purpose, presence, you can see a spiritual arc without needing him to draw it for you. A life that bent toward meaning without pretending the bend was painless. When high-profile people share cancer diagnoses, they do more than tell their own stories. They model how to hold the space between public and private. The Princess of Wales, March 2024 announcement, and James Van Der Beek's 2024-2025 disclosures share some DNA: clarity, restraint, a call to compassion, but they diverge in tone and aim, shaped by different roles and illnesses. Catherine's message was a short-filmed statement, careful on details, framed around her family's needs, and a request for time, space, and privacy. She described preventive chemotherapy after a major abdominal surgery revealed cancer, and used the platform to speak to all those whose lives have been affected by cancer, offering solidarity without entering the weeds of screening or symptoms. The job description of a royal consort is different: represent, comfort, preserve privacy. She did. Van Der Beek's job, post Dawson's Creek, was different. He wasn't an active head of state's spouse. He was a working actor with a long runway of press relationships, a following light enough to stay nimble, and a distinctly American platform that rewards morning show candor. He could afford, and chose, to be more granular on process and purpose. He used people's pages and network sofas to talk through shock, the administrative labor of treatment, the 90-10 emotional math, and crucially the action item: screening even without really obvious symptoms. Where Catherine's map read privacy first, his read boundaries and a message. Where hers located faith in the collective, to everyone facing this disease. And in her family's circle, his offered purpose as a public good. If I can spare anybody the experience of my last year, I would definitely want to do that. He also had leeway to revisit the topic repeatedly. Royals tend to release updates at long intervals. Every word is freighted. Van Der Beek could return to GMA, drop a Today segment, reinforce the screening push, and leave the rest alone. Neither approach is a template for the other. Both avoided spectacle. The point of the comparison isn't to rank courage but to notice context. Different roles call for different communications. A palace's virtue is steadiness. A Hollywood alum's can be specificity. Both can move people toward compassion in one case, toward a clinic appointment in the other. The other contrast is cultural. Catherine's announcement immediately became tabloid fodder, a magnet for speculation that forced Kensington Palace into a policing role. Van Der Beek sidestepped some of that by parceling out control to mainstream outlets, used to handling celebrity vulnerability with decorum. In so doing, he modeled a third way for public figures: neither silence nor overshare, but intentional disclosure with a clear why, carried by platforms that will meet your boundary with their own. Van Der Beek's line, "You don't need to have really obvious symptoms to get screened," carries weight because colorectal cancers can grow quietly. When symptoms do occur, they can be subtle, intermittent, or mistaken for less serious conditions. It's helpful to know the common signals and their limits. Potential warning signs include a change in bowel habits lasting more than a few weeks, diarrhea, constipation, narrowing of the stool, rectal bleeding or blood in the stool, bright red or dark, tarry stools, persistent abdominal discomfort, cramps, gas, pain, a feeling that you need to have a bowel movement that isn't relieved by doing one, unexplained weight loss, fatigue or weakness, and iron deficiency anemia, sometimes first picked up on a routine blood test. With rectal cancer in particular, bleeding, a mass sensation, or pain during bowel movements can occur. None of these symptoms proves cancer. Hemorrhoids, fissures, infections, irritable bowel syndrome, dietary changes, and other conditions can mimic them. But benign causes don't earn a free pass to ignore. The point of knowing the list isn't to self-diagnose. It's to shorten the lag between noticing something and talking to a clinician who can evaluate in context and recommend next steps. For average-risk adults, major U.S. guidelines, USPSTF, ACS, recommend starting routine screening at age 45. People with a family history of colorectal cancer or advanced adenomas, certain hereditary syndromes like Lynch syndrome or familial adenomatous polyposis, inflammatory bowel disease, or other risk factors may need earlier or more frequent screening. The best test is the one you'll actually do. Options include colonoscopy, often every 10 years if normal, annual high-sensitivity fecal immunochemical test, FIT, stool DNA tests like Cologuard, generally every 3 years if negative, flexible sigmoidoscopy or CT colonography. Positive non-invasive tests require colonoscopy for follow-up. Practical tips lower barriers. If the colonoscopy prep stories you've heard are what's scaring you off, know that modern preps are often lower volume and better tolerated. Talk with your doctor about options. If time off work is the blocker, FIT is a quick, at-home option that still saves lives when done annually. If cost is a concern, ask your insurer about preventive care coverage. Many plans cover recommended screening without cost sharing. If logistics, rides, childcare are the issue, recruit a friend now. People like to help. Give them something helpful to do. The message Van Der Beek kept returning to wasn't live in fear. It was don't assume feeling fine means you're fine. Screening is not a referendum on morality. It's maintenance. The quiet, simple action, booking a test before you think you need it, is the kind of decision that doesn't feel heroic until the day it spares a family a year they didn't plan for. That was his purpose. This is yours. When James Van Der Beek called treatment the full-time job of having cancer, he named the reality most patients and families discover within days. Modern care is a system you have to learn while you're scared and tired. The work divides into 3 buckets: medical decisions, logistics, and communication, and each gets lighter when you treat it like a project instead of a storm. Start with your map. Write down or type into a note app you'll actually use the basic file, diagnosis, name and stage, the names, specialties, and contact info for your clinicians, the hospital or center's patient portal login, current meds and doses, allergies and key dates, first symptoms, biopsy, staging scans, treatment start. Put this document where you and one trusted person can find it at 2 a.m. It spares you from fishing through emails when a nurse calls back or an ER triage asks for a list. Second opinions are standard, not betrayals. Most clinicians expect and welcome them, especially for big decisions, surgery approach, chemo, backbone, radiation fields. Insurance often requires a referral. Social workers and nurse navigators can help route requests. Prepare for consults by writing down 3 classes of questions. 1. What do you think is going on? 2. What are the options and trade-offs? 3. If I were your family member, what would you recommend and why? Bring someone who can take notes or record with permission. You won't remember everything. Ask for plain language summaries. Good doctors are translators as much as technicians. Insurance is a parallel maze. Assign a benefits captain. You or a friend with admin stamina to read your plan's coverage pages. Call member services to confirm pre-authorization rules and keep a log of calls, date, name, gist. Many cancer centers have financial counselors. Use them early. If denials arrive, don't panic. Clinicians can appeal. You can too. Keep every bill and EOB explanation of benefits sorted by date. It feels like busy work. It prevents surprises. Build routines for energy. Treatment schedules, infusions, radiation fractions, oral chemo cycles are rhythmic. Side effects often are too. Track how you feel each day for a couple of cycles. Patterns will emerge, e.g., days 3-5 after infusion are nap days. Then coordinate life around those rhythms. Errands on up mornings, appointments in your best window. Work on the days your brain can track. Say yes to offers that match the rhythm. Rides on down days. School pickups during scans. Say no to everything else without apology. Portals, passwords, portals. Learn your center's portal, but don't let test results ambush you at midnight. If raw numbers spike anxiety, ask your team to discuss results by phone before releasing them, or choose to check only at set times with someone beside you. The information yet Van Der Beek used applies here. Context from a clinician turns scary decimals back into decisions. Finally, deputize and debrief. You are not the entire care team. Let friends run point on meals, childcare, dog walks, or a once-a-week admin hour where somebody sits at your kitchen table and helps sort paperwork, refill meds, and book transportation. Then after each cancer day, do a 2-minute debrief. What went right, what to change next time. It's small discipline that pays compound interest. The job isn't glamorous. It is a job you can get better at. One of the quietest burdens James Van Der Beek kept off of social media was his family. The statement announcing his death spoke for them. The interviews centered his message, not his house. That restraint is a blueprint. You can be honest with the people who need you without feeding an audience that doesn't. Start with the people under your roof. Children metabolize news differently by age, but the rules are constant. Use clear words, tell the truth at their level, and repeat as needed. For little kids, Dad has an illness called cancer. The doctors are helping. He might look different and get tired. You can still ask for hugs. School-age kids can handle more specificity, medicine called chemo, surgery to remove a tumor. But they still need reassurance about routines. Who takes them to practice, who packs lunches, where mom or dad will be at bedtime. Teenagers usually want facts and agency. Invite them to appointments if they ask, share the plan, give them a job, pet care captain, dinner one night a week, and make space for anger that isn't about you. All kids need permission to keep being kids. Birthday parties, exams, jokes, without guilt. Partners and parents need a different kind of clarity. You'll field two kinds of offers, genuine help and advice masquerading as love. Say yes to the first. Could you cover Tuesdays 3-5 so I can rest? Will you come to the scan so I don't hear results alone? Could you handle insurance calls this week? Decline the second cleanly. Thank you for the article. We're following the oncologist's plan. Or, I appreciate your belief in supplements. We've chosen not to add anything without our team's okay. It isn't rude to protect your bandwidth. It is required. Friends will ask, how can I help? The easiest way to make that useful is to funnel them through a coordinator, a sibling or close friend, and a tool, a meal train sign-up, a shared calendar with need-a-ride slots. Be specific. No spicy food. Leave in a cooler on the porch. No knock naps. Ask for boring favors, oil change, school forms, laundry folding. Come sit with me during infusion is an ask many will welcome and remember. Social media can be a source of support and a thief. Decide your boundary early. If posting helps for updates for prayer energy requests, set rules. One post after big milestones. No live updates from clinics. No tagging medical staff. No guarantees to answer DMs. Appoint a trusted friend to screen messages and summarize the love without forwarding horror stories. If you prefer quiet, delegate updates to one person who can email a BCC list and head off rumor. Scripts help for the drop-by advice and the curious colleague. Thanks for asking. We're staying private on details, but we appreciate your support. We're working the plan our doctors recommend. If we need anything, I'll let you know. Today's not a cancer talk day. Tell me about your dog. Home needs walls. Your circle is the door. Honest, bounded, and boring is a very good way to keep everyone warm. Every person with cancer has at least one shadow worker, the spouse, sibling, parent, adult child, or friend whose calendar flattens so care can rise. Caregiving is both privilege and pressure, and the myth that love alone protects you from burnout can hurt both of you. The better story acknowledges three truths. You are part of the team, you are not the patient, and you are a person with limits. Job 1 is triage. Sit with your person and list tasks that must leave their plate: driving, insurance calls, meal logistics, home maintenance. Pick the ones you can carry without resentment and outsource the rest. Use a shared calendar, Google, paper on the fridge to plot appointments, meds, and helper shifts visibly. Set alerts for refills and lab draws. If the clinic offers a caregiver class or nurse navigator consult, take it. The jargon isn't gatekeeping. It's a tool you can learn quickly with a little coaching. Practice presence, not performance. At appointments, your ears are a superpower. Take notes, ask clarifying questions. Can you say that another way? What would make you change course? And check back what you heard before you leave. At home, silence is sometimes the best gift. Your person doesn't need a pep talk every hour. Learn their cues: when to talk, when to touch, when to let them scroll, and teach them yours: how you ask for a break without guilt. Name hard things aloud. I'm scared today too. I don't have the answer, but I'm here. Build your scaffold early. Schedule respite the way you schedule chemo, on the calendar, not as an afterthought. That can be as small as a 45-minute walk or as big as a half day where a friend or sibling sits with your person so you can see your therapist, nap, or do a thing that reminds you you're still you: running, choir, faith group, video game, gardening. Tell helpers what support looks like. No pity, make me laugh, or ask me how I'm doing, then tell me gossip. Caregivers who access counseling or peer support groups, hospital-based, community nonprofits, online forums, have better outcomes and fewer health crises. This isn't indulgence, it's maintenance. Set information boundaries. You are not a press secretary. Create a single update channel, email or text thread, and a cadence: Fridays unless something changes. Let distant relatives know what questions you can't answer. It's okay to tell a friend, I can't carry your fear and mine. It's also okay to curate your inputs. Mute social accounts that spike anxiety. Limit late-night Dr. Google scrolls. Ask your person for a no-cancer hour daily where the house talks about anything else. Finally, accept help, and accept the version people can give. A neighbor who can't cook may be great at rides. The friend who panics near hospitals might be the one who mows the lawn without fanfare. People will disappoint you. Many will surprise you. Let the imperfect army carry some pieces. The measure of your love is not how much you hurt. It's how well you help and how gently you let yourself be human. The difference between a year that breaks a family and a year that bends can be a policy made by someone you'll never meet. Employers, schools, unions, and civic leaders can carry James Van Der Beek's purpose into decisions that reduce friction and increase screening. Start with time. Add a preventive care PTO bucket, 4 to 8 paid hours per year reserved for screenings: colonoscopy, mammogram, Pap, HPV, low-dose CT for eligible smokers, skin checks. Announce it, normalize it, and tie it to reminders. March is Colorectal Cancer Awareness Month. Share resources, not just ribbons. For shift workers, schedule flexibility matters more than slogans. Make it possible to trade shifts without penalty to keep screening dates. Insurance design matters. If you control benefit plans, ensure USP's recommended screenings are covered without cost sharing, including follow-up colonoscopy after a positive FIT or stool DNA test. Some plans erode this coverage. Fix it. Cover modern preps and sedation choices for colonoscopy. If you self-insure, negotiate with centers to simplify pre-authorizations and allow direct scheduling from primary care. Make clinics closer. Partner with local hospitals or FQHCs to host on-site screening fairs for stool-based tests, or to deploy mobile units where possible. For schools and universities, host lunch and learns for staff on screening ages and options. Faith communities and Rotary-style clubs can do the same, pairing a clinician Q&A with a sign-up table and a volunteer-built ride pool. Protect jobs. Cancer is not a performance review. Train managers to respond to disclosure with flexibility and clarity. Here, what we can do. Here, who you can call. Here's how we'll support your team. Build cross-training into teams so one person's absence doesn't sink the ship. Celebrate colleagues who step into support roles. Offer EAP, Employee Assistance Program, counseling to patients and caregivers. Advertise it without stigma. Language and access are equity issues. Provide materials in multiple languages. Ensure your vendors' portals and appointment lines are navigable for people with limited tech access. Offer in-person scheduling options. For hourly workers without paid leave, consider leave banks funded by voluntary PTO donations. Small grants, gas cards, meal vouchers through HR or an employee relief fund can bridge weeks that would otherwise break. Measure and maintain. Track uptake of preventive care PTO and screening. Reward teams that hit participation thresholds. Pizza is fine. Recognition is better. Ask employees annually what made screening hard and fix one barrier at a time. Keep the conversation going past Awareness Month. Van Der Beek used his name to nudge individuals. Institutions can turn nudges into norms. There's going to be a purpose to this, he said. Let part of that purpose be a PTO policy you write next week. Purpose needs a calendar. If James Van Der Beek's words moved you, here's a simple month-long plan that turns intention into motion without turning your life upside down. Week 1. Book or prompt a screening. If you're 45 plus and at average risk, call your primary care clinician and ask, what colorectal screening is right for me? If you're under 45 but have a family history, first-degree relative with colorectal cancer or advanced adenomas, ask about earlier start. If colonoscopy logistics are tough right now, request a fit kit. If you already have a plan, text 2 friends this exact line. Van Der Beek's story reminded me, have you booked your colon screening? I'll drive. Week 2, build your file. Even if you're well, create a simple health document, paper or digital. Your meds, allergies, doctor's names, insurance details, and an ICE in case of emergency contact. If you're living with illness, add your diagnosis, treatment plan, and key questions for your next visit. Share the file with one trusted person. This 5-minute act pays off on chaotic days. Week 3, help someone else. Post a specific offer in your circle. I can cover rides Wednesday afternoons this month for anyone heading to medical appointments. Or, I'm organizing a prep day buddy list for friends doing colonoscopy who can be on call. If you manage people, send an email announcing preventive care PTO, even 2 hours counts, and link to ACS screening guidelines. If you lead a community group, schedule a 20-minute screening talk with a local clinician. Week 4, learn and give. Read a 1-page summary from a reputable source, Colorectal Cancer Alliance, ACS, on symptoms and screening options. Share one fact on your social or in a group chat. Screening now starts at 45, or a fit test once a year catches blood you can't see. If you have $10 to spare, donate to a screening access fund, national or local. If you don't, volunteer an hour. Translate materials into your community language. Staff a table at a health fair. Chaperone a neighbor's kids while they head to a consult. Throughout, practice the 90-10. If you or someone you love is in treatment, give yourselves James's math as permission. Plan the work. Name the fear. Celebrate a small win, a walk, a clear lab, a good nap. Post about screening when you have the energy. Go quiet when you don't. Presence is packing, not performance. These aren't grand gestures. They're the sort of full-time job tasks that add up to a life carried with help. If even one person in your circle books a test because you asked, James's purpose just bent a line. James Van Der Beek's public grace wasn't an accident of personality. It was the product of choices he kept explaining in plain language. He met shock with structure. You just don't have the information yet, then the full-time job of having cancer. He calibrated hope with honesty, 90% framing the future, 10% allowing collapse. He used fame as a lever for logistics. There's going to be a purpose to this. Then a steady drumbeat about screening even without really obvious symptoms. His faith showed up in posture, not pronouncements. His presence in packing, not platitude. He protected his family's privacy while giving strangers sentences that made their corridors easier. The temptation with celebrity illness is to let inspiration curdle into consumption, a binge of details that doesn't reduce anyone's burden. He modeled another way. Share what helps, hold what hurts, and keep the why simple. If his story spares even a handful of families the experience of my last year, as he put it, then a terrible fact has a dividend. He is gone at 48 with courage, faith, and grace. The work remains distributed and small. Book your screening, help someone make theirs, build a file, write a policy, fold a friend's laundry, use his 90-10 when the weather turns. And when someone asks what he said about battling cancer before his death, give them the handholds he left, then add the one sentence he wanted echoed louder than any eulogy. You don't need to wait for obvious symptoms. Get screened.